Sandra Choi. I'm with the Mingwan Center for Community Action, and we convene the wider APA Voice Coalition. Today we are at the CUNY Journalism School. We had a mid-year convening with all of our members today to talk about some really important issues and topics that we need to talk about before the general election happens this November. We had speakers and presenters from the Equal Rights Amendment. This November, we're going to see that on the ballot in New York State for all voters to vote on. We also being hosted by the director of the Asian Media Initiative at the Center for Community Media here at CUNY Journalism School to talk about strategies for us to develop media roundtables to engage ethnic and community press in the lead up, again, for the consequential and important November general election. Please stay posted and follow all of our work. We are so excited to bring you on this journey as we work towards the November election. Thank you.
Again, my name is Trisha Kim, community organizer here at Mingwan. I think I only have 5 minutes for this, and it's only like 5 slides, so I'm just gonna go zip right through. So basically, National Voter Registration Day 2024, we would like APA Voice to kind of commit to this holiday as a collective, and I'll just kind of explain like the date, resources, being a partner, etc. So National Voter Registration Day is on September 17th, 2024, this year. And basically it's a nonpartisan civic holiday celebrating democracy by registering voters. And it's managed by a 501c3 called Nonprofit Vote. And they provide tools and resources for registration opportunities for the holiday. So if we, once we collectively participate in this holiday, we'll get different tools like social media toolkits, digital and print stickers and posters. I think they're also available in a bunch of different languages as well, ranging from Mandarin, Korean, Spanish, etc. And they also provide state-by-state guidelines for each. So since we're in New York, they'll give us New York guidelines on how to vote and the date of the elections and etc. They also give us communications and social media toolkits, which I think will be released today. And so basically it's like Instagram infographics, or I think also maybe email templates as well. As well as they'll also give us fact sheets for community partners, high school and college campuses, elected officials, and employment engagement, all by July 1st as well, so that's today. And so there are already over 1,300 community partners already signed on and counting. So once APA Voice joins, we will also be a part of this number. And so there are 6 very basic rules to being a community partner. One is to be nonpartisan. So our goal of this is to just get the vote out. We are not telling people who to vote for or what to vote for, just to be nonpartisan. Second rule is to be inclusive. I feel like that goes without saying. I don't need to explain that. Everybody works in nonprofits. So number 3, be informed about your state's voter registration laws. And because we are APA Voice and the purpose of this coalition is to get the vote out, I think we also already know that as well. Number 4, stay transactional. Number 5, be #VoteReady. And number 6, have fun. So very simple rules. And so I also want to reiterate that the National Voter Registration Day is handing out the nonprofit vote is granting mini grants for Asian American and Pacific Islander and also Native Hawaiian based organizations that mainly serve these communities. So it is with the help of the Wallace H. Coulter Foundation, and the grants range from I think $500 to $1,500 depending on the number of voter registration forms submitted. And the goal is to amplify voter registration and turnout across diverse communities and increase engagement across underrepresented groups. And we are applying to this grant. You're free to apply as well with your own orgs, but we're applying on behalf of APA Voice as a coalition. So we'd really like members to collectively commit to doing this together when we decide to have this event. So to the actual day of the event, I'm still in the process of actually planning, so any ideas would be, any and all ideas are welcome. But so far, the kind of gist of it is to, I think, have an event for National Voter Registration Day in each borough to kind of make a citywide effort and reach to these underrepresented communities. Different events I think it'll mainly consist of tabling, so similar to also like the youth event, except it's not a complete open street. We'll have voter registration forms available as well for people to, like, not only who are over 18, but also youth to pre-register. And we're also thinking maybe like a fake ballot. We did tabling at Jackson Heights. I know a lot of you were also there before. Where we did a fake ballot on the OCOV and got a lot of pledge cards as well. So we wanted to practice a fake ballot. Some other creative ideas were a lot involved, maybe like art activities. So maybe for to get children involved, we could have like a little mini National Voter Registration Day mascot. Like I saw some examples online. People just straight up drew a ballot box, put eyes on it, cardboard cutout, and then they passed out these like little coloring pamphlets. Kind of like a coloring book, but we can make it a lot smaller for kids to color. Maybe like a coffee and donuts station just to have a conversation about New York voter guidelines. Or maybe even a Polaroid station. We also did this at the Jackson Heights outreach where we had a cardboard trifold board. Those are what are called, right? The trifold boards. And we basically had people, because Jackson Heights was a very condensed community with immigrants, we just wanted them to kind of share their personal stories in relation to voting and their own personal experiences with civic engagement. So we could have like showing a representation of different boroughs in New York and the type of voters that we have. We also had an idea on drawing on a table cover. Maybe if pamphlets are too hard, we can just lay out a sheet of like really big white paper. People can write personal messages about how they feel about voting, maybe their anxieties about the election, where they're from, and like we can have a really big, kind of like a map almost of just like community opinions, as well as a trivia competition, but that also is TBD. But any ideas are open. These are just kind of the gists of what can be available at the tabling. It is also up to you guys if you just decide to participate in different boroughs and where you guys are located, depending on where you're tabling, whether it's indoor, outdoors, or the scale of the event as well. There's a lot of options for you to choose from. But yeah, lastly, we just kind of wanted to emphasize, I will be talking about this again at the policy subcommittee meeting when we all meet on Zoom. And at that point, I will probably be asking several of you if you want to volunteer and to help us build this event, because we do want this to be a citywide event, not just in Queens, not just in Manhattan, in Brooklyn as well, maybe Staten Island, I'm not sure, and also the Bronx. So yeah, thank you so much. Just putting this image and idea in your minds, and I will be talking about this again at the subcommittee, so just be aware, and yeah, thank you for listening.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Angel Rena. Like Sandra mentioned, I'm an intern at the Mingguan Center for Community Action, and I was also an intern back in 2021 when we did a lot of GOTV work ahead of that primary election.
Oh, hi, I'm Sohee. I'm an intern at the Mingguan Center for Community Action, and I'm also a college student.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm also involved with the Mingguan Center. I've been involved with their youth organizing committee for a while now, and I'm also a rising sophomore in college.
Great, so Jonathan, Sohee, and I have been working on this new Asian American college campus engagement program, which we have coined ASSET, which stands for Asian Student Civic Engagement Task Force. And essentially this program will be kind of a part of APA Voice, a branch of APA Voice that will expand our GOTV work to across New York State ahead of the the November general election and hopefully beyond. So in this presentation, we'll talk through the objectives of our program, the vision that we have for ASSET, the work we've done so far this summer, and also next steps and how you all can help really ensure the success of our program. So just to give a little bit of background, I know Sandra also did the funders briefing several months ago, but the congressional districts or CDs that we're targeting include 3, 4, 17, 18, 19, 22, 25, and 26. And we decided to target these specific districts because particularly 3, 4, 17, 19, and 22 had very small vote win margins in the last congressional election. When you look at 4, 17, 19, and 22 in particular, all of those had less than 10,000 votes in the win margin, so very tight races. And when you look at 17 and 22 in particular, both of those had under a 3,000 vote win margin, so very, very tight races. And then we also decided to target CDs 18, 25, and 26 because they contained particularly large counties in New York State, and then also had very large universities, so a lot of potential Asian American students that we could work with. And then lastly, when you look at all of these CDs and you look at the Asian voters in these districts, there was a particularly low turnout in the last elections, high party unaffiliation compared to other racial groups, and then also when you look at these groups, there was a very large APA registered voter increase, so a large population of Asian American voters that we could potentially work with. Something else we wanted to note in terms of the background is it is important to note that with redistricting and the last redistricting cycle in 2020, some of the maps did change, and we really wanted to emphasize that this is particularly important for us to really mobilize Asian voters with this new redistricting maps, especially in districts that saw a lot of change, so 18, 19, and 22, just so they're aware of who their candidates are, where they're voting, and things like that.
So now to the objectives of the program. The first one is to increase voter turnout amongst younger voters and Asian Americans. Previously, like one of the districts was District 22, which includes Utica. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Utica. And very recently we saw there was a case of a 13-year-old Myanmar refugee that was recently killed in that district. So I'm predicting that, within these districts upstate, that's so important that we engage with Asian American community members and inform them about this upcoming election, since there's a lot of current events that are unfolding in those districts. The second one is building relationships with Minkwon and these partner universities. So I think in District 19, with one of the districts that redistricted recently in this past year, that includes now Cornell University, and so that opens an opportunity for us to engage with these big universities that have a huge Asian American demographic. And the last one is to really, again, emphasize that New York State has these 6 competitive seats that both in upstate New York and Long Island that we saw we saw that there wasn't a huge voter turnout, and so it's important that Asian American voters get out to vote because they can make a huge significant differences in these key districts. And then, so now we're gonna talk about the first part of our vision. So overall, this is just like the branch of our programming. So the first part of it is that we hope to have 2 to 3 leaders in each of these college campuses. So I know we mentioned already Cornell University, there's also Bing, Rochester University, and that opens the opportunity to engage with these young leaders that hope to take up these leadership positions. And then we have duties and responsibilities for these leaders that will serve as the campus coordinators. The first one will be mobilizing volunteers via our database. Our database includes like community-based organizations and also networks within their own college campuses. So different voter initiatives that are also nonpartisan and aligned with our values. The next one will be training students on campus to participate in like tabling, canvassing, phone banking, and other community events to engage with members with GOTV-related activities. The next one would be utilizing materials from APA Voices, so that would include like translated materials or any wording that we would want to use with engaging voters in these districts. And the last one, which is pretty important, is to complete regular check-in meetings. We hope to have hopefully like a person in contact for the programming that these campus coordinators will have to regularly check in with. So if they're hoping to have like a significant project with either like phone banking or canvassing, we hope to check in with them to see the progress of that event and to see how we could move forward to continue pushing momentum in their districts and their campus as well.
And then another big part of our vision for this program that will take place this summer is the August leaders training. So we're going to take the chapter leaders that Jonathan talked about, gather them together on Zoom, and then hopefully also have an in-person component as well, and just train them. So our training's objectives are threefold. Number one, we want all of the chapter leaders and the potential volunteers of ASSET to get together, get to know each other, and build these relationships that will be very important for them this entire year. Second, we're going to be training them on how to do a lot of the GeoTV work and activities that all of us are very familiar with. For example, how to get set up and run phone and text banking through ThruTalk and other platforms, do a canvassing training with them as well, how to use resources such as voter guides and candidate surveys ahead of the general election, and we are hoping to provide them with templates and translated materials as well. How to start and maintain a chapter social media, because we're really hoping to leverage social media through our program. And then lastly, how to navigate conversations with individuals in their communities who are not used to voting and don't have a huge voter turnout. And then lastly, we're also hoping to invite a lot of the community-based organizations, the Asian CBOs, that work in each congressional district to our training as well, and give them an opportunity to meet the student leaders who are going to be part of our program, allow them to get to know each other and brainstorm programming ideas that they'd like to do together, and also create a timeline and plan of action for different potential activities that they want to do ahead of the November election.
Okay, so far what we have done is for each congressional district we laid out earlier, we researched the voter base, so the population of Asian voters, what percent of the total population in the congressional district they are, the voter base. We've also, as Angelina hinted earlier, we've researched AAPI and Civic engagement related community-based organizations in each congressional district. And then on the student side, we've created a spreadsheet and we have many contacts for AAPI and civic engagement student organizations at pretty much each university for each congressional district. We've also just initiated our Instagram account, and it's at ASSET New York. So for what we will do next, first, we want to create the resources that the volunteers can use, any interested volunteers, including flyers, pamphlets, materials. And with the research we had about the key ethnicities within each congressional district for AAPI voters, we can use that to understand what kind of needs there are for the resources. Next is our social media. We plan to launch content consistently on our Instagram and expand our social media presence, so please follow that, our Instagram account at ASSET New York. With the CBO contacts and our research, we hope to connect student organizations and the community-based organizations to support interested student volunteers within each congressional district. And for the volunteers, we hope to hold information sessions.
So now some ways that you all can really help us launch this program is, number one, we know that a lot of your organizations work with many youth volunteers. So if you do have some sort of youth program or youth volunteers, please ask them to fill out our ASSET interest/application form. I will be sending that out to you all after this meeting later this week. Second, if you could really help us promote our social media content on Instagram and potentially other social media platforms, that will also be really helpful. And then lastly, you can email me if A, you're interested in helping run our August training, any kind of component of it. B, you know of any fundraising or grant resources that we can apply for, because we know how important it is to secure funding to potentially pay our volunteers and our chapter student leaders, and also provide our chapters with translated materials and other templates and resources. And then lastly, if you know of any community-based organizations in any of our target districts, or if any of you all do any civic engagement work or GeoTV work in upstate New York, Long Island, in any of our CDs, please email me as well. As of today, we only have like 18 weeks until the general election. As of our August training, it'll be 12 weeks. So we really want to hit the ground running as soon as possible. And all of these means of helping us are really crucial to the success of our program.
Cool. Hi, everyone. As Sandra mentioned, I'm Melinda. I think I've met a lot of people in this room before, but if it's our first time meeting, I've been working as a consultant with Minkwon over the past year, but have been working with APA Voice and Minkwon for maybe about 3 years now. So I'm excited to keep on working with you all. So as Sandra mentioned, we did a round of interviews for our report, and some things that arose out of this was need for more support around political and civic education, right? People were seeing that we're doing the GOTV work, we're trying to get people to the polls right before the election, but actually a lot of times we're missing people because that often for a lot of people who aren't already activated on this, don't already know why voting matters, aren't already kind of part of the civic engagement process, that's too late, right? So how do we build out this kind of movement for democracy? How do we build out language and vocabulary for democracy, for organizing, as the Asian Media Initiative was kind of alluding to, in our communities long term? So what we're doing is trying to work with you all over this year to pilot some civic education trainings that we can run with our different community members to hopefully expand that next year as well. Right, so this is a way for us to equip you all with the tools to create curriculum for your communities, and we're hoping that this is something that you can use with your existing programs. So that might be things like citizenship classes, that might be social service recipients, that might be youth programs that you're doing, different volunteer programs. These are like various ways that you can build a base for people that we can start to educate and mobilize on these. So in terms of what this looks like, as Sandra mentioned, I've been also working with the youth working group, and people in that subcommittee have seen some of these materials to create this kind of training script and materials that can be adapted for their various youth committees, their various youth members. This is an outline of what that looked like. So it includes things like talking about bringing the group together to create their own definition of what civic engagement is, creating examples of what that looks like. It includes kind of people creating posters and doing a gallery walk around different examples of youth movements and youth activism throughout history. It includes like a scavenger hunt to find their local elected officials and find their websites and learn a little bit more about the different roles of government. And then a little bit about why voting is important and voter registration. So that's a broad overview of what this could look like, right? There are obviously various ways that people can adapt this for their own organizations and their communities. Great. One other thing I forgot to mention is in terms of the youth working groups, so I shared this toolkit with everyone so people can run this training. It's already kind of prepared for them. They already have all the materials in their own organizations. Also, the working group is working to adapt some of these training modules into kind of activity stations for a voting themed block party they're doing later on in the summer. So that's another example of ways that these materials can be adapted. So in terms of next steps, we are trying to get 4 to 6 APA voice groups to pilot a training or presentation this year. So if you would like to get involved, if you would like Minkwon's support in doing kind of civic education work in your community, then you can reach out to me. So I put my email there. We'll also send it out after today. And you can email me to talk about either like a more in-depth activity-based training, so that would be a smaller group over a longer period of time, but more involved versus a presentation, which might be a larger group over a shorter period of time. And we can talk about customizing materials, right? So for example, when we looked over here, the civic engagement research exercise, which was for the youth working group, was 4 examples of youth movements and them looking into that. That might change depending on your organization, right? So it might include things like examples of work that your organization has done, or examples of movements from back home if you're working with immigrant communities, right? There are different ways that we could adapt that. And then also doing train the trainer. So I could work with you all to talk about who's facilitating this and how Minkwon can help support that. And then you could also review the existing materials we have and look for opportunities to adapt to your organization. So even if you think, okay, we have these materials available to us. I think that I am ready to run it on my own. Just let me know, let us know anyways, even if you don't need a lot of additional support, so we know, what's going on, who's working with these materials, how it's going, if there's any feedback.
All right. So we're half year, right? So what are our goals, right? So in terms of goals, we have 2 tracks, right? If you see the one outlined in red, right, that's for developing material. So what exactly are we developing, right? We want to have some sort of policy platform for the entire coalition. It should be in online format, so people that are tech savvy can access it. People who actually want to do their research and read, they can read it, right? It could also be in print. We want to publish a tiny booklet that looks very cute, that you can use it when you're doing your outreach to give it to potential voters, and they can understand like how policy actually relate to their day-to-day life. Because every single year, twice a year actually, we tell people to vote. Well, for what? What does that result in, right? People don't understand and they lose interest. So it's important for us to essentially give a voice, give a face to what exactly they're voting for and make it really matter, right? We need to have this material to let people know that, hey, you voted for this person, they're advocating for this policy. Oh, hey, my organization is doing this canvassing thing, right? We want you to vote because we think, right, our organization is working on some sort of policy reform and you might be interested, right? So on the other side, we also want to build a relationship with the elected officials as a coalition and also build solidarity with other groups. So here are some of the timeline we established, right? The election is right around the corner, right? Outside of GOTV stuff, we have to get this thing done quickly. So if we want to have all of those material done, right? So by late July, our policy committee, we should meet and finalize the text draft, right, for at least the online platform first, right? And then we need to have the booklet and also one-pager. We'll be using the one-pager for canvassing because booklet is expensive, right? Imagine like printing like, I don't know, like 10,000 of copy of a booklet for canvassing. The budget, I cannot. So we will also have a one-pager for that. We need to ramp up our work in our coalition meeting to make sure the material is finalized, hopefully by late August, and also translated for sure, so only for the in-print material. And then we also want to send it to print, and by mid-September or end of September, depends, right, we should be able to distribute it and also promote it online. In terms of advocacy, we've been actively working on some issue like our city, our vote. I can talk about that later, and also we want to improve accessibility, in language accessibility in terms of the early mail ballot implementation. So we're also keeping an eye on enhanced ERA and enhanced AVR and also ERA. So you will all get the slides later. And so what policy are we talking about? What are we putting on any kind of material, right? So first of all, this is not a policy everyone agree on, everyone endorse, support, or do not support. No, this is something we just want to feature and highlight, right? So some of the most common submission we receive from our API coalition members are religious diversity, right? We want, this is a city level issue. Reach did not, same fate as last year, only passed the Senate, did not pass the Assembly, unfortunately. More about our AAPI identity, we have data desegregation and also establishing it as a school holiday on a state level. We see our the coalition, we see CACF here leading the reach and also data desegregation campaign. And also in terms of voting rights, right? We're dividing this print material by categories, right? We just finished AAPI identity, now it's voting rights. Voting rights in terms of city, on city level, we have our city, our vote already passed, already law, it doesn't matter, it still will be determined through court. So most likely we will be able to, NYC will have a rally in Albany in September to build public support for this. And we can talk more about how we as a coalition, we can support, and also not just in person, and also see if like legal leaders, anything we can do as well. For example, like submit
a coalition-wide amicus brief. Also, in terms of enhanced AVR, I think past Senate, still in committee, it's going to get reintroduced next year, but it's nice for us to get on top of things and just be familiar with it. Also want to highlight one of our coalition member here, Adhikar. They want to establish a Neo-Silo Minimum Standards Council Act. So we saw a lot of coverage, I think, at the end of the session from a lot of ethnic media and also documented. Unfortunately, it did not happen, but but with more experience, right, hopefully they make some real movement in the next session. Economic empowerment. So I know when people talk about economy, all they think about is jobs. Economy is also about how we mitigate harm, about how we empower our communities through protecting them, right? So this is a bill that speed up the casino process. It passed Assembly and Senate. And on the other side, we have a local bill that introduced by Senator Ramos. So this is regarding a local casino proposal in Flushing Meadow Corona Park. So session just ended. So I'm sure it will get reintroduced, and we can talk more about that later in the coalition meeting. And this bill is introduced by Ramos and Lee, right? It's passed Assembly, is stuck in committee. So this is actually pretty cool. It allows IDNYC holders to use their city ID at banks, so which will make a huge difference for our undocumented or just immigrant community in general. Immigration. So we have a close relation with NYIC, and so this is on the federal level though. This is Adoptee Citizenship Act of 2024. It was first introduced, I think, around 10 years ago. It just keeps getting reintroduced. Hopefully they built some momentum. And so we don't have time to talk about more immigration stuff, but Minquan being an immigration rights organization, if you have any feedback, suggestion, let me know. And the next policy meeting is July 19th, 10 a.m.
Very good. Hi everyone, my name's Gwen. I'm the youth organizer again at Minquan, and I'll just be updating you all on what the youth subcommittee is going to be working on for the summer. So we're planning on having an event we want to call the Youth Vote Fest NYC. So all of our members. So our subcommittee is expected to register 100 young voters ages 18 to 29 per year per member, with an estimated total of 2,000 young voters registered each year. And we are also expected to train 35 youth per organization using the training that Melinda has presented to you all, with the estimated annual target of 350. So some strategies that we've been going off of and our year-long work together is to build stronger relationships with the youth that are currently in our network and continue to engage them in informative discussions and training regarding civic engagement. And the second big strategy is to bring new youth into our spaces by hosting appealing community events where we can expose them to civic engagement education. And so this event is really targeted around the second strategy of bringing in new youth. And it's summertime, the youth are on break, they're looking for community events, summer activities, enrichment, and volunteer opportunities. So we thought it was a perfect time for a civic engagement block party. So the objectives of this block party are to introduce youth to civic engagement, voter registration. We want them to have fun, meet their community members, and learn about the resources provided by each of our organizations. We want to create a fun and relevant environment surrounding civic engagement and provide some counter and comfort to their skepticism regarding civic engagement. And we want to empower youth and provide a space for them to express their political passions, what issues they want to vote on, and their hopes for their own communities. So we're hoping to get about 100 to 200 youth, but we'll see. It's our first event together. We're trying not to get expectations too high, but it'd be great to have 200 people there. Potential locations we're considering are Flushing Meadows, Corona Park. We just recently applied for a permit and are waiting for more updates from our contact. Otherwise, we are looking towards 34th Avenue Open Street in Jackson Heights. With Set on the Move has been our contact with them. We need to apply for additional permits and just figure out space capacity there. But those are our two potential locations. And then for our planned activities, we have a pretty stacked lineup. We'd love to have organizational tabling and incorporate Melinda's training. There's a scavenger hunt aspect to it. When Melinda was discussing, highlighting different AAPI movements and history, or doing like civic engagement trivia, things like that. We want to incorporate a little bit of each scavenger hunt activity into all the tables so people can come and learn about the organization's work and also participate in this fun activity. We'd love to have a live DJ play during the free hour when people are walking around the tables. We want to invite 3 local performers, so we're looking at a drag artist, a local band, and maybe inviting some student groups. We also want to have a raffle. We're going to have tickets exchanged after completing those civic engagement activities that I just mentioned. We'd love to have one local youth speaker, preferably an Asian American activist, community organizer, or community leader from New York, who can speak on the importance of civic engagement to youth. And then we'd love to have 4 to 5 local food vendors, preferably vendors who are based in Queens, and reflect the diversity of Asian food culture. We also talked about having a little clothing drive, sort of as an introduction to the idea of mutual aid, and invite youth to bring their clothing and exchange it with others, and then any unexchanged clothing can be donated. So those are the activities we have planned. In terms of raffle ticket exchange, we want to give a little bit of incentive, again, because we do have that 100 voter registration target. We want to invite students to register to vote at each of the tables and exchange 3 tickets for their voter registration packet. For youth who are not of age or to pre-register or register, we want to have them practice registering to vote and then get 2 tickets in exchange for that. They complete our scavenger hunt activities, they get 1 ticket, fill out an OCOV pledge card, 1 ticket, or correctly answer trivia questions about API movements or voting history, they get 1 ticket. And we have yet to finalize the prizes, but there's been talk of like headphones, gift certificates, things like that. And then for our current budget, Minkwon Center is planning on providing $400. Chinese American Planning Council is providing $500. Asian Americans for Equality are looking to contribute a little bit, and then CEP and Parent-Child Relationship Association are reaching out to funders currently. So broad asks for our coalition are, if you'd like to participate in tabling and you're not a part of the youth subcommittee, still love to have you there, including hosting, and you can host scavenger hunt activities, invite youth 18 to 24 from your networks, and send us recommendations for youth speakers, performers, or food vendors. And if you have the capacity to donate funds to compensate performers and pay for venue fees, we would also very much appreciate that. And our event is scheduled for August 10th, 3 to 6 p.m. Just come and find me if you want to talk more about this. And I'll be sending out more advertising materials closer to the date when we have those prepared, so y'all can mark your calendars.
So this November, voters will have the power to ensure that our rights, our fundamental rights, are protected and enshrined in the New York State Constitution. So what is the Equal Rights Amendment? We are a ballot initiative, a committee. In New York State, the way ballot initiatives are initiated is through the state legislature. Other states, you've probably heard of other ballot initiatives. Some of them are citizen initiated, and what that means is citizens collect lots of signatures, and they have to meet a threshold in order to have it land on our ballots. But in New York State, how it passes is the state legislature in the state assembly, in the state assembly member house, and then in the Senate. And it passes through 2 consecutive state legislatures, and then it lands on our ballot. And we have found that ballot initiatives are a really important tool to have a form of direct democracy when our rights have been rolled back by politicians, and we can't trust the courts to protect our fundamental rights. So in short, the New York State ERA that's going to be on our ballot in November, it is an amendment to protect our rights and reproductive freedoms. So this is our 30-second pitch. We have a ballot initiative committee. Instead of a candidate that's going to be running on the ballot, we have an issue on the ballot. And we have polling and research committee where they have intentionally chosen these words because we have found that this is what speaks to voters. It is, we use the active verb protect because it makes clear that we're bolstering something. We've found that when we use the term adding, it creates a lot of suspicion because voters will tend to think that other people are getting more rights in comparison to me when we say adding. And I'll get into that a little more later. So we like to say we use the active verb protect, bolster, strengthen our Constitution. Here we have the word our because we have found that in order to win this amendment in November, we need to convince Republicans, we need to convince independent voters that this affects all of us. So this is about us. And then rights, this is clear that it's not just about abortion, but the other rights that we have that are fundamental and is missing in our state constitution. And then reproductive, we have found that voters, no matter what political party you are part of, abortion on the ballot it turns voters out. Voters will come out and vote in support of abortion access, abortion pregnancy outcomes, and bodily autonomy. And then freedom. Freedom is the magic word that works for everyone, no matter what political party you identify with, because no one wants the government to control our bodies. So the New York State Equal Rights Amendment is an amendment to add explicit protections in our state constitution, because no New Yorker should be discriminated against because of who we are, what we look like, who we love, whether we have a disability, and whether we decide to have an abortion. So these are explicit protections that we are naming in our Constitution. So when we say enumerated protections, again, we are listing what these protections are. And the last time our Constitution, the New York State Constitution, the Equality Clause was amended in 1938. And it only includes race and religion. So all of these other protected categories, ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, and sex including gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy, and pregnancy outcomes, these are not explicit protections that's named in our Constitution. So this is long overdue. So in New York State, we are leading with reproductive health in this amendment. And we are squarely putting this in the framework of our rights and freedoms. So the New York Equal Rights Amendment, we are saying that we are defining restrictions to abortion as sex discrimination. So sex discrimination is defined as restrictions to abortion, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health. And the reason why we're doing this is because this goes beyond the federal Constitution. As we saw with the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision, Roe defined abortion and abortion access as a privacy issue. So what makes our New York Equal Rights Amendment different is that we are naming restrictions to abortion and restrictions to abortion access as sex discrimination. So we are going beyond the federal Constitution. So the ERA is a powerful tool to broaden abortion rights. So the reason why we are including all these other protected categories is because we see abortion access and reproductive health care as intersectional with all these other protected categories. And we are, as you might be familiar with the first Equal Rights Amendment, it was primarily centered around white middle-class women. It left out all these other communities that are also affected by abortion access and restrictions. So this time, we want to include these communities and do better. These are the executive committee members that's part of the Equal Rights Amendment Coalition. We are made up of groups that many of you are familiar with. So there are about 9 members, and in order to become an executive committee member, there is a financial commitment, and as a voting member, we drive the direction of the campaign. So paid media, earned media, research and polling. So very much like a campaign as you would see for a candidate, except that we are an issue that's going to be on the ballot. So New York and the national landscape. As you know, that many politicians are restricting the rights and freedoms of people across the country, especially with banning abortion. So right now, there are about 9, I believe there are 9 that will be on the ballots in November across the state. So we are one of many states attempting to enshrine abortion rights and abortion access and bodily autonomy in our state constitution. And as we saw in the gubernatorial election in 2022, we were very close to getting an anti-choice, an anti-abortion governor who said he would appoint an anti-abortion health commissioner. So it's really important that voters come out in November to ensure that these protections will be permanently enshrined in our Constitution, because we don't want our laws to change with whoever's in office. And it's only been 8 of the last 58 years where we saw a pro-choice state legislature. So it is very rare for us to open up the Constitution. So while we're opening up the Constitution to include abortion, we also wanted to include these other protected categories. So with the ballot language that's going to be on our ballots in November, this is the first time that we will be applying the plain language law. So it has to meet the level of 8th grade or below, and it has to be in plain language so that voters can understand in a simple way what they're voting on. And this is what the restrictions are. So it has to be 15 words or less. The word, I believe, reproductive rights was also contested. So it has to meet these very explicit restrictions. So again, this is an amendment to protect our rights and freedoms. This protects all New Yorkers against government discrimination, means that no matter what your sex, age, ethnicity, or disability status, your rights are protected. This includes LGBT and pregnant New Yorkers, protects abortion. A vote yes, it closes the loopholes in the state constitution, so our rights are protected. A no vote leaves them open. And the emphasis is on loopholes, the language is on loopholes, is because that many voters mistakenly believe that we already have these protections in our New York State Constitution. Our coalition. So as you saw, our coalition is driven by the executive committee members that are, representative of immigrant rights, gender rights, civil rights organization. And we have a broader coalition of 250 groups that we will rely on to do grassroots outreach, so that all eligible voters will vote yes on the ERA, and we hope that you will join the coalition and fold the ERA into your mission so that we can get everyone to vote yes. Also, there is a July 5th deadline with the Board of Elections. So the language that you saw is the language that we submitted to the Attorney General's office. So the Board of Elections is a bipartisan agency. July 5th is when they will publish the language that you just saw, and there'll be an opportunity for members of the public to comment and give input on the language. After July 5th, there will be a 15-day period, submit public comment, and then the bipartisan agency with the Board of Election Commissioners, they will put forth the language that they decide on based on the public comment. So we hope that you will participate and have your members participate in providing input into the language. So after that, August 5th is when the Board of Elections will publish the final language. Next is on our opposition. The opposition is the same playbook that they've used across the country with pushing back on these efforts to enshrine abortion protections in state constitutions. They have weaponized culture issues of, they say that we want to protect children who want to have a sex change and that parents won't get notified. They say, well, does this mean that everyone can use any bathroom? So these are the same, fear-mongering efforts that they are using across the country. They're doing the same thing in New York. They're also using the issue of migrants in New York. They want to create this narrative that migrants will get more protections in comparison to other people. So we are working on crafting a message to address the misinformation. And we hope that you will join us in these efforts. Our plan to win. So our plan to win is based on the presidential turnout of the last two elections. So we anticipate about 9 million voters will also come out to vote, and we need about 4.5 million voters to win this amendment.
Most Asian American voters say that they trust in-language news more than they trust mainstream news, but a lot of the in-language news that they're receiving is from overseas, from countries of origin or from social media. So the question is, how do we bolster up these community media outlets? We also know that there is a quality issue. I mean, this is something I feel like we can speak freely here. A lot of our newsrooms have also admitted this to me, especially some of the more trusted outlets like even World Journal tell me that they have experienced a decline in quality over the last 10, 20 years in the quality of their reporting. And we're doing our level best on our end. I see my wonderful colleague Jahangir is here to actually boost some of this. He has just been doing the third year of an elections reporting fellowship in which we work with newsrooms inside New York City to get them to produce up to 3 and potentially even 4 in-depth reported pieces on elections, from redistricting to explainers on such issues as the new ERA, ballot initiatives, how to vote, how to register for vote, what are some of the changes to voting rights and access. And we are working to kind of boost the quality of the coverage as well. But the main issue is on these platforms like YouTube. YouTube is a complete different level. But even on WeChat, WhatsApp, all of these platforms, these outlets do not have anywhere near the same reach. They just aren't in the same level as some of these influencer out campaigns. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that they see themselves as community-based organizations and actively engage with their audiences and are able to kind of build trust with a newer generation of subscriber and with communities that have historically not been represented in their pages. I mean, I'm eager to hear from our colleague in Korean broadcasting as well. I think broadcast is a challenge as well. One thing I'm hearing from a lot of our publishers is that on the issue of presenting diverse views and being a voice for many aspects of the community. Our communities are obviously extremely polarized and divided right now. There's a lot of kind of political conflict where these larger polarization issues are kind of refracting through historic issues and community, barriers and hierarchies in all of these ways. But one of the things we're hearing is that a lot of the kind of more conservative groups have shifted further right, so that a lot of the activist and community organizing leaders do not feel safe or comfortable appearing in conversation with them. And I think with good reason. But what that ends up meaning is that, you either have both sidesism inside the coverage, or you have the activist perspective absent altogether. So I would welcome your guidance on how to address this challenge. I obviously don't have any answers. And with quality issues, I think the biggest issue is always going to be resource strain. A lot of these newsrooms have seen tremendous loss of revenue. So if you do have any kind of ability to pool advertising budgets, or if you do have any kind of fellowship opportunities or any kind of opportunity for somebody to work as a part, like if there any kind of, I know you all are also extremely resource strained as well, but I think that's the biggest challenge. One thing I'm looking at doing with Asian media specifically is pairing publishers with scholars or with leaders or with public health experts who have expertise in fundraising, so that they can fundraise to produce journalism as well as data around certain issues and scholarship, so that they can fundraise together, because publishers are obviously not able to apply for a lot of these kinds of grants. So anyone who is interested in partnering, who has any feedback, if you have any issues or campaigns that you're rolling out for this election season that you want brought in front of in front of our community press, if we want to produce some roundtables like Sandra's suggesting, I think we can certainly find a way to do that. We have a relationship with the AAJA, and I do love them, but AAJA works with Asian journalists. We work with community news media for and by Asian Americans. And a lot of times in AAJA, a lot of the resources, that their main focus is on getting white-led newsrooms to not be racist, which, great, somebody should do it. It's an uphill battle, and I'm happy for them to do it. But ultimately, our work is on making our own, the for us, by us news media ecosystem a stronger, more robust, more informative, and more vibrant place. And I do think there's actually a lot of hope. One thing that I always like to tell people is in the last 5 years alone, there have been 87 AAPI own voice community media outlets that have been launched in the last 5 years, 87. So obviously there's an appetite, there's a desire, there's a curiosity. Our people are ready to be visible, connected, engaged, and to have relevant information. So I'm hoping that this vehicle, I just think news media ecosystem doesn't just have to be a place where you go for classified ads or for marriage ads or to find a house. It can be a place that's really about community organizing and political awareness that's relevant to us. So I want to be a partner to you all in this, and I want to figure out how we can leverage and bolster this long overlooked vehicle for civic engagement. Yeah. One thing I've been noticing is, especially with the Vietnamese media, Vietnamese media is, I think, the third largest Asian American news media ecosystem in the US, largely concentrated in Texas and in California. Enormous amount of disinformation. and misinformation inside the ecosystem. Unlike, I think, some of the other news media outlets that we have, where they do have a lot of local independence. But we are working with one of my colleagues at the J School itself, is Lam Thuy Vo, and she's been working on a series of misinformation workshops with Vietnamese radio. So I'd love to loop her in on that conversation as well. We're going to try and figure out if we can create some similar workshops with other languages, and the target languages we're working on right now are Chinese, Korean, Bangla. But we need to keep expanding. Some of these messaging groups like mommy blogs or like parenting groups are becoming a primary source of news and information for people. And obviously they're not journalists, and between us, I really don't know that journalists have any ground to stand on at this stage, because obviously those even trained journalists are struggling to kind of navigate. But I do think we do need to start thinking more creatively. So for the map and directory, we have been very kind of heterodox in what we've defined as community media. So we have a range of things. We have podcasts, WhatsApp groups, legacy newspapers, in-language newspapers and magazines. We have a range of glossy special interest magazines. And there's an Iranian Jewish bridal magazine. There's a trucking magazine for Punjabis. There's all different kinds of stuff. But we are also interested in including a growing body of these diasporic media outlets. Someone had mentioned the Chinese language news media. A growing number of Chinese Americans are getting their news from some of these more diasporic outlets. And we know that a lot of outlets that were founded independently by Hong Kongers in the 90s have now been pushed into signing cooperative agreements with Chinese state media. So they're losing trust in their communities as well. And we know that in the Korean community, there's just an enormous resurgence of community-based media. But we also know that the way that these laws are being weaponized against political opponents inside Korea have implications for the media ecosystem here, 80% of which are actually owned by some of the large media corporations inside Korea. We know that a number of our community media outlets in the Philippines, as well as in Indonesia and elsewhere, are dealing with incredible authoritarian repression. So a number of our journalists here are in exile, and our communities are dealing more with information that's coming from overseas and politics back home. So we're also including more diasporic human rights documentation projects and diasporic news media outlets as well. So whatever our communities are consuming, I want in the directory. So if you're hearing of some parent group or some WeChat platform that everybody's reading, I would love to know about it so that we can at least look at them and then vet them and then see if we can add them to the directory.